the progress. I mean, I saw in Slack that Dario put a logo, so very exciting stuff. So yeah, who wants to kick off the demo?
I guess that would be me. Let me start sharing my screen. So for our application, I'm just gonna, for theme, to stick with a theme, I'm gonna first put this. So for our application, the first thing that we wanted to discuss was obviously the frameworks we were going to use for our styling. And our thought process when approaching this was to first see whether the tools we already have in terms of our dependencies would satisfy our current needs. And the tool that we ended up, the main tool that we have been using as a dependency is Material UI. Now, as you folks know, for our snack bar, one of the dependencies is Material UI. And we decided that given the criteria and the feel that we wanted to get from our app, which will be discussed later on in this demo, Material UI kind of satisfied those needs. Now, one of the big things about Material UI also as to why we chose Material UI was because it basically cleans up our code. We don't need to do a lot of the coding for the components. So as you can see, the buttons over here, they're pretty clean. They provide us with radio buttons that we can use, which we will be using. Tabs. This is going to be one of the things for our navigation. Well, this is going to be our navigation in our application. So Material UI even provides that. And I already went through buttons, so that is a repeat. Yeah, so and then another reason why we went with Material UI was because we wanted to actually stick with the consistency of the snack bars in terms of styling. If we started going a different direction in terms of our styling, then we would have had to like redesign or restyle snack bars. If the case was where like the snack bar style really like conflicted with our general style on what we were trying to do. So yeah, so that was one of the frameworks that we decided on. The second thing that we decided on was using styled components. Now I'm a huge fan of styled components, and I was talking to the group earlier, and essentially the benefits of style components is essentially the same benefits of why, like using React, like you're able to use like the benefits of using React as a JavaScript developer. You are able to create components and then employ those components onto your functionality. So for example, I don't think I need to go too much into style component mechanism, but like we first started it with the styled modal, and because of what we did with the styled modal, we can use it anywhere in our application. If our application expands, or like if the functionality expands, then we can use this anywhere. It's not just restricted to just one component, like functional component in our application. Now, Lauren did mention a very cool file structure, and we did end up employing that. So thank you, Lauren. That was amazing. It was the index file structure. Really like that. I think we'll be going into the file structure later, further later on. Okay, yeah. Sorry, Galen. Yeah, oh yeah, last thing that I wanted to talk about was global styles. Now, originally I did this, as you folks remember, But the problem was that it was starting to fight using, this is a styled component. Create global styles is a styled component functionality. It's great, but as is the case when you're using multiple libraries, so like sometimes they clash. And in this case, that was happening. So we got on a call with Lewis during the office hours. And yeah, it was really great. Thank you, Lewis. I'm sorry you couldn't make it, but so what we ended up doing was like there are workaround ways of making themes in Material UI that you can use in Material UI, but then we ended up deciding on something much more simpler. Just creating objects, assigning them to constants and exporting them. And you can use them both in Material UI or in styled components. And yeah, you don't need to muck around with the mechanics of the different libraries. So yeah, that's it on my end. And I will pass it on to Caitlin now.
Yeah, thanks, Karen. Alrighty, so this is the desktop one. Okay. So yeah, as Karen alluded to a bit, we did this week do quite a bit of reorganizing of our files, both based on feedback from Lauren and also from Lewis. So essentially, it's still a work in progress, but previously we had kind of all of our files just pretty much at the root. And we've kind of organized those into sub folders. So components and pages being the two main ones where all of our different JavaScript files are going. So all of our pages are living in this folder here. And right now we've got our add items page and our welcome page, as well as an index. Like Karen was talking about, we've got index files to kind of export all of our different components and make them easier to reach from within other files. And so within each folder there, we have a JavaScript file that is very similar to what it was before, as well as a file for styling using those styled components, and then another index to export everything. And that exists in both of these folders and will exist in all of our other folders that we make this week. And then we also have components for all of those other files that are kind of subcomponents within the pages. For example, our modal, our pop-up modal that we use when a user is deleting an item, and also our share token that generates a token for user if they're creating a new list. And again, they all follow a very predictable pattern of having a general file with all of the JavaScript, a file with the styling for the styled component, and then an index to export it to other components. And then the other thing, another thing that we did was to incorporate the Material UI components into these pages. And I can show you an example of that. I can show you in Share Token. So in Share Token, we are using both a button and a text field that are being imported from Material UI. And then we pretty much were able to almost like one-for-one substituted in for the HTML elements that we were using previously. So instead of a general HTML button, we're using a Material UI button. And instead of a text field, an HTML text input, we're using a text field from Material UI. And as Karen was saying, like the nice thing about this is it just like it kind of makes it have a uniform look across the entire app. We're not having to style each individual HTML element. It's kind of just imported with some baseline styling, and that we're going to continue to tweak that this week. Yeah, I think that's a general overview of that. So now I'm going to pass it off to Daria to talk about some of our styling decisions that we made this week. If I can figure out how to stop sharing. Oh no. Oh, there we go. Okay, sorry.
Thanks, Caitlin. Sorry, how do I share this again? Can you all see my Figma screen?
Yep.
Sorry, I forgot how to share for a second.
It's literally the hardest part of like being a remote developer. It's so hard.
When it comes to design, what we decided to do was basically to follow the process that was already outlined for us in the issue regarding the design. And it was very straightforward and made it super easy for us. So the first thing that we did was we created this mood board here. And we decided to divide it into 4 parts, and each person on the team got to add their own things that they think should be on the mood board and things that they would like to see on the app. And you can see different elements here. For example, you can see words from that very helpful list that was given to us. You can see just random images that kind of convey the mood that we want the app to have. You can see some examples of typography, icons, and actual apps with elements that we like. Then we all had a call to discuss this mood board, and we arrived at certain colors and fonts that we felt represented all of this together. So you can already see that there's a lot of green on this one and a lot of yellow. So we were clearly inspired by avocados, and we decided to take that as a starting point. So we have our color palette here. We have our primary color, which is green, our accent color, which is yellow, and our neutral colors, which are just different shades of greenish gray. And then we also decided to look at the fonts, and we found 2 fonts that we liked. We have Maven Pro for our headings, and we have Lato for our body text. And we made kind of an unconventional choice here, because we know that usually it is a general pattern to pair serif with sans serif fonts, but we actually really liked this one for headings, so we decided to go sans serif because for our app we wanted something sleek and clean, and a serif font just didn't look right for that. And also the logo that I really didn't mean to share on the group chat. I just wanted to show it to my teammates, but accidentally I revealed that too early. But yeah, we just used the icon of avocado that Abby found as an inspiration. And we used the name Avocart that just combines avocado and shopping cart. And also, I just wanted to mention that I kind of made everyone work in Figma because I think it's a great tool. And what's amazing about it is that you can see here we have all of the styles added into a little library that we can reuse across the design file. And for example, this logo here, I created a component out of it. So if I were to change something in this particular logo here, then it would change every instance of this logo on this Figma file. So this is a really cool feature, and we have already used it. So yeah, this is our basic design system. I guess that's what it's called. So I am now going to pass it on to Abby to talk about the actual designs that we created.
Yes, thank you, Daria. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Let me know when you guys can see it.
Yep.
Yay, okay. So the first thing I have up is actually not what we put together, but a lot of the components that we pulled from. We basically just took some of these, really just copied them since that's what we're going to be working with anyway. And when we code, so you'll see we really utilize like the application bars right here, the like inputs and the buttons. So this was really helpful in kind of putting together, oh, and also the radio buttons you'll see as well. So yeah, I kind of just wanted to show you that we worked off of this. And now I'm going to show you our wonderful design. So we focused first on a mobile design because when we were talking, we believed that this kind of app would most likely be something that someone would like have on their phone, like and have while they're shopping. So it made more sense for us to go ahead and do the mobile view first. And unfortunately, I'm sorry for this. I don't know why my Figma is the only one being weird. There's like this red overlay right here that's not on anyone else's right now, but just if you could ignore that for a second. So yes, this is our welcome view right here. It includes Daria's beautiful logo that I think looks awesome. And so you'll see that instead of having from the app that how it looked, we had our create new list and join existing list links down here, but we made them into buttons. And yeah, that's about it for right there. Well, I will say that the background, even though I feel like at first look, it doesn't seem like we put a lot of thought into it, but we were really, especially Daria, focused on like, like testing out different gradients and like seeing what looked the best and looking at like the different contrasts, like especially including this heading right here, welcome to your smart shopping list. We like played around a lot with colors. So this whole process was a good 3 hours of a lot of work. So and upon clicking join existing list, we wanted the avocado cart to collapse and to create new list, and then this input button and this text will show up. And so if you click join existing list, you'll be able to enter in the 3-word token. So a little different than what we had previously. So on our app, like our previous one, it kind of combined both of them, which on a mobile app would look very like, I don't know, kind of like congested. So this was like a better option that looks a lot smoother and cleaner. And over here beside, you can see on every like view, you'll see all like the different like UI components, like material UI components that we were thinking about using, and then like the text like we worked off of. So yeah, we were thinking about utilizing cards, but that just didn't, it didn't seem to go right with what we were trying to do. And we didn't really have a lot of text to use cards like this, but it was a good thought. So that's our first two views. Then I'll scroll over here. And then if the shopping list is currently empty, this will be the view. And you can add your first item with this button. And you can see that we took one of these over here. So we took this one, and you'll see now that we have kind of like a little like, I don't know, not footer necessarily, but we have like, there are two buttons down there. So this will be our list. So you'll navigate to the list with that. And it is a house right now for an icon, but we're going to replace it with something that looks like a shopping list. And then this will be the add button. And so we'll replace this with something that looks like similar to that. We just utilize like the material UI component just to make it simpler. And then you'll see that Daria's beautiful logo, on this, it got pushed, we pushed it up to the top. And so I think, well, yeah, I think that looks really nice and clean. We didn't, again, I think even one of the words I think a few of us wrote on the mood board was like clean. So yeah, that is that view. And as you see, more material UI components. And then this is what a user's list would look like. So we went ahead and we're thinking about utilizing like different kinds of like backgrounds or like, you know, changing, having this like a different color. And we were starting to think it looked a little too congested, especially because we kind of added each like a little like background for each little item. So we did away with that, but we also edited all the different like headings, like instead of like to buy for next week or like to buy for next month or items, like those long headings. Again, we wanted to keep it like more simple, more sleek looking. So we changed those. So this is what it's going to look like as like someone would scroll down for their different items. And again, we didn't have a checkbox or a trash can that would be right here to delete the item. But what we're thinking is that for checkboxes to be on the left side, and then if the checkboxes are unchecked, they're going to be gray, and when they're checked, they're going to be green. And then the trash cans, it just sounds so terrible when I say trash can, but like that icon is going to be gray, and that's going to have our delete functionality. So yes, that is that view. And then here is our add a new item view. Again, looking very similar to the other views. And we kind of kept it a little more so the same. There's not much on the page to begin with, but I think just pointing to how we're thinking about utilizing the radio buttons gray, not being like, I guess, clicked on, and then using our accent color when it is clicked on, as you see here. And that's about it. I feel like when you show it, you don't know how much effort and how much time goes into it. But there was a lot of back and forth on different colors, like just different icons, just different looks. I mean, it took a good amount of time, and I think we're proud of how it's looking. If anyone else wants to say anything or talk about our how it's looking.
It looks really great.
Yeah,
Well
it's
done.
clear you all put a ton of thought into it. It looks beautiful, beautiful, beautiful.
Yay. Just curious, are you going to be designing for desktop as well, or is this mainly a mobile app?
Yes, we're going to also make designs for desktop. Our idea was that since this would be predominantly used on mobile, then we just wanted to utilize the mobile design and just have a background and the list as a rectangle, like in the middle of it. And we're currently working on, well, Karen is working on the background with lots and lots of SVG icons, which
Nice.
is going to look very beautiful, I hope.
Awesome.
Super cool. So the material UI thing in Figma, that's just like a library that, or a collection, right? That's available in Figma, and you can just pull that in, and super cool. So how easy is it to, I haven't really worked in Figma. I mean, I use Figma, but I don't like build anything in it. So how easy is it to, like, say you wanted that navigation piece in your app, how easy is it to like pull that in from Material UI and then customize it to your color and stuff?
Abby, do you want to answer that?
Well, it depends if you asked me before last night or after last night. But yeah, it's pretty simple. I think now it was really helpful. It's really just like almost like the components almost as easy as like copying it and like bringing it over to your board. I can't say, I will say the, I want to point out the palette that Daria did that like I thought was like super cool, and I didn't know that was like a function of Figma, and how easy it's going to be like all of this because you can see all of like the, you know, the width, the height, like we can really just like copy everything that we're doing basically in Figma and like use it when we're coding. And that's something that like Daria brought up last night, like it will just make it so much easier utilizing Figma. So very easy once you learn your way around it.
Yeah. It is really nice, like as a front end developer. Oh my gosh, Siri. Sorry, my Siri like pulls up whenever I say anything that remotely resembles that name. It is really nice as a front end developer to have designs in Figma because it's so easy to just like, oh, it's that color, and oh, this is the CSS, this is the border radius, and it really is super nice, very handy.
Yeah, if you're super bored and you want to explore it some more, you should check out the prototyping features in Figma as well. Like you can draw between like button clicks goes to a particular screen. So I've like designed my personal site where like you can click through each of the buttons and each of the links, and it'll take you to like the corresponding screen. So it actually feels like you're navigating through the site. I know my last company did designs like that at work, and that was super nice. Like trying to understand the flow as a dev, it just felt nice.
Yeah, like on your home screen, you know, when like let's say that you wanted to join an existing list, so you could have it set up when you click on join an existing list, and like it'll transition to the next view. It's kind of fun.
Yeah.
I think Adobe also has a similar tool. I don't remember what it's called.
The XD, Adobe XD, I think is what it's called. Yeah. Did you, let's see, it seems like you all figured out how you can combine using Material UI along with styled components. Is that correct?
I think Lewis helped a lot, but,
Yeah.
but yes, we now know how to do it.
Cool.
We're having difficulty like kind of editing the Material UI components like once we had them in our code. And Lewis really came to the rescue and showed us how to properly do that.
Nice.
So we're going to try to utilize this.
Sorry, I'm trying to, how do I turn off Siri?
Awesome.
That's me with notifications. like on my computer. I'm always really bad at like sharing my screen and not turning off notifications from like my phone. So.
There, I just turned it on. Sorry, everybody.
Oh no, I was just saying that we're gonna try to like utilize as many material UI components as possible, and then fall back on styled components if needed. So
Nice.
Also, credit to Jono for letting us know that picking fonts can take a long time.
Yep.
We all got together and we were just looking through fonts, and after about 5 minutes, everything looked the same.
Yeah.
And like if we scrolled any further, we would find another one that would be like, it's just recency bias kind of thing. Like,
Yeah.
oh my God, that looks better. So thank you.
I'm impressed that you did a font pairing, because when you pair fonts, that brings a whole nother layer to it as well.
Yeah.
I think we leaned on, like, Google Fonts has a feature of like comparing, like helping you pair fonts, which if we hadn't done that, I think it would have taken an enormous amount of time to pair fonts together.
And just know, like,
That's true.
This doesn't have to be the world's greatest app in the history of apps. Do you know what I'm saying? Like at some point, you just need to make a decision, and the decision you just have to be okay with it and be like, this is good, this is credible and good enough, and that's good, right?
I think having that framing going in, like Karen said, the fact that Jono kind of told us that going in encouraged us to set like a deadline of, okay, we've got 10 fonts, let's call it a day and like choose from those 10 instead of just like spending all day on it.
For sure.
Yeah, seriously.
Nice. I think it looks really beautiful. Very beautiful. I love it. Love it. All right. Any other questions, comments, concerns? All right. Let's talk about accessibility. Let me get my thing set up here. Okay. Share that screen. My app is running. Okay, cool. So this is this is probably my favorite talk to give. I told, was it Caitlin and Abby, or is it Caitlin and Daria? I think, when I had office hours with you all last time. So I have a new job that I start in mid-June, and I'm super excited about it, but I'm also kind of bummed because at the job where I am currently, I was going to do a big like quarter-long accessibility push for our application, and so I had it all planned out, and I was pretty excited about it. So I'm trying to get as much done like before I leave as possible. So anyway, I've really got accessibility on the brain. So today we're going to be talking about the what, why, and the how of accessibility in our web applications. Please let me know if you can't see my screen. So you will often see accessibility abbreviated as A11Y. Now, for the longest time, I thought that this meant that you were an ally. I thought that is what it was, but this is actually a sort of a common abbreviation that we use as developers. So accessibility is abbreviated to be, right? Oops, sorry. It has the A, and then it has 11 letters in the middle and a Y. There's the same thing with Kubernetes, and the same thing with internationalization, right? You see that as I18N. It's because they're removing those 18 letters in the middle. So just know that it's A11Y. So Wikipedia talks about accessibility as the inclusive practice of ensuring that there are no barriers that prevent interaction with or access to websites on the World Wide Web by people with physical disabilities, situational disabilities, and socioeconomic restrictions on bandwidth and speed. So this is really interesting to think about in this year that we've just had a year that we've just had with like kids that are doing school from home, and so many people don't have access to reliable internet or even like decent devices to do their homework at home, right? They are experiencing situational disability, unable to access the content that they need to learn. So when sites are correctly designed, developed and edited, generally all users have equal access to the information and functionality that they need. The W3C, which is the World Wide Web Consortium, maintains a working group dedicated to web accessibility, and they publish related standards. So you've probably seen those standards referred to as the WCAG or WCAG, the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. That's what the W3C publishes. So in the US, anyway, Section 508 is what requires government agencies to make websites accessible to people with disabilities. So my previous job was at the University of Minnesota, which is a public institution. And that institution is required to have all of their web content meet, at the time it was like WCAG 2.0 standards, but I think that they have since raised the level of those standards to 2.1, 2 point something. But all of those government websites that you'll see, like county governments, federal government, state government, any public institutions are required by law to meet these standards. So I think a lot of times that we think when we're thinking about people that are accessing technology in a different way, we think of people using assistive technologies like a screen reader. So that includes screen readers, screen magnifiers, speech input devices. I know some of my kids, when they were younger, instead of typing, would use speech to text to help them with writing, because handwriting was challenging. So that's something that people use. Assistive keyboards, and of course, Braille displays. So popular screen readers, we've talked about this before, but NVDA and JAWS are probably the most widely used on Windows. JAWS is super duper expensive, is my understanding, but it's very widely used by people who are using screen readers. NVDA, as we know now, is it's open source, and you can just download that on your machine. And then on Mac, VoiceOver is built in. Oh, and then Daria was showing us on her more up-to-date Windows machine, they have Narrator that just comes along with Windows. And that was a nice tool, I thought. I like how it's actually, the speech on that, Daria, was a little bit more accessible for those of us who aren't used to using screen readers. I thought it was a little bit easier to understand. What's really interesting about screen readers and these kind of assistive technologies is that they vary, their functionality varies, and you can have different bugs, accessibility bugs, depending on which technology you're using. So it's a lot like having to work with cross-browser issues, like sometimes in IE11 something doesn't work, or sometimes something doesn't work in Safari, or it looks a certain way in Firefox. It's really the same thing with these kinds of assistive technologies. So it's important to be able to test in different environments. So when we talk about accessibility, why do we need to design and create accessible websites? Well, one, it's the right thing to do. The web is so important to how we interact with the world now that it's really, it's like a human rights issue, right? We need to have equitable access to this information and to be able to access the functionality that the web gives us. You may be legally obligated to make your websites accessible. I think this fact really stuns me. So there are more people in the US that access websites using assistive technology than live in Canada. So more people in the US are using some kind of assistive technology than live in Canada. And some estimate that 20% of website visitors have some sort of disability. It is a really wild statistic. It's very surprising to me. I guess it's not surprising to me though. And if you think about it, probably all of us at some point in our lives are going to have some kind of disability that'll make it challenging to interact with a website, either something permanent or situational or just semi-temporary. There will be some point in our lives where it will be more challenging to interact with the web. So what's really interesting, I think, is that and this is a really great business case to bring up if you are ever working with a company who's super resistant to wanting to spend time on accessibility for the website. Making your pages more accessible for people with disabilities improves the experience for everyone. So if you think about, there are some people, I am not one of these people, but there are some people that are just like amazing in Vim, right? That they know a gazillion keyboard shortcuts, or in their VS Code, they know all of the keyboard shortcuts and they can just fly through that tool like so fast. And it's the same thing when people are interacting with websites. They're real power users, right? If you make your website more accessible via keyboard, you're going to make it even better for power users, just like that. So it's a really great business case if you have a company who's very resistant to spending time on this kind of work. Microsoft has these really great, has been publishing a lot of information on inclusive design. And they have these personas that we can think about when we're thinking about creating experiences for the visitors to your website. So people can have permanent disabilities, temporary disabilities, or situational disabilities. And you can probably look through these personas and maybe find yourself in there, right? So for example, when my children were first born, it was definitely a situational disability. I always had a child in one arm. You often are developing some kind of repetitive stress injury from carrying around a baby all of the time. And so you're like trying to navigate websites with one hand, trying to find that doctor's information right in the middle of the night. So, and you know, maybe you've broken an arm, or maybe you, I don't know, but right, we can often fall into one of these personas. And so these are great, these personas are great to think about when you're thinking about creating an accessible experience for your site. So how, this is, I guess this is the important part. How do we actually make our websites more accessible? So probably the number one thing to do is to use valid semantic HTML. So what that means is there are a gazillion HTML tags. Do your very best to use the most appropriate tag for the situation. It doesn't mean that you can never use divs, because divs are very useful, and it doesn't mean, right, that a div is not forbidden. It just means that if you need a button, if you need to create something that requires a button, that requires an action, then make it a button. If it's a link tag, then make it a link tag. If it's something that's a section, use a section. That will go probably 75% of the way to making sure that your website is accessible, is using that valid semantic HTML, making sure that your labels have the for attribute, or if you're using React HTML4, making sure that that matches the ID of the input that you're using with that label. Always, this is a really very straightforward one, and it's forgotten all the time, which I will show you in some demos, but always include alt attributes in your image tags. Very important. So ARIA stands for Accessible Rich Internet Applications. And you want to think about using ARIA as sort of the tool of last resort. Sometimes we do need to use ARIA, and it's totally okay. But before you use ARIA, I would try to think, okay, is there a different way that I can accomplish this? Is there a way that I can accomplish this with just using the right HTML? So ARIA, yes, useful if necessary, but reach for it as a last resort. This is excessively important. So ensure that you can do everything on your website that you need to do with only your keyboard. I think for most of us, we usually use a mouse or a trackpad, but it's really important to navigate your website with the keyboard and make sure that you can do everything that you need to do with keyboard alone. Ensuring that the content and tab ordering makes sense, doing some color contrast checking, in addition to there are a number of websites where you can check for color blindness and how people with a particular kind of color blindness would experience your website. That's really important to check. And then something that we worked with on one of our issues for the website, make sure that you're not only using color to signify state, because that is not going to be meaningful for a non-sighted user, right? Anything else I wanted to say? Nope. Okay. Sorry, just looking at my notes. Cool. So some things that you can use. So number one, I sort of think of building accessibility into your site in layers. So number one, you want to have some kind of ESLint tool that's just built in and does automatic checking for things like, it can check for things like, did you include a for attribute on your labels, right? And automate some of that away so you don't have to think about it all the time, and it'll just fix it for you. Step two, I would use something, so this talks, number two here, it talks about guided audits, such as what's built into, this tool is called Accessibility Insights. I'm going to demonstrate a different tool called Wave, which is a similar kind of tool that's like a static checker. It's very similar to the Lighthouse tool in Chrome DevTools. So using Lighthouse will help check some things and we'll find some issues. Oh, this is important to point out. So automated tools like Axe or JSX, there's a JSX tool checker that integrates with ESLint. They only find about 30% of the accessibility issues. So it's really important to use more tools than just that. Again, really importantly, make sure you navigate your website with your keyboard and make sure that you can do everything. Oh, and then this is a really cool app called Hemingway app. So when we think of accessibility, one of the things we want to think about is the content of your website. And this is more important, the more text kind of content that you have on your website, you want to be thinking more about this. So it's recommended that you have no higher than a 6th grade level for the text that's on your website. And for a couple of reasons. Number one, you want to design for people that have cognitive disabilities. Number two, designing for that 6th grade level also helps people just get to the information that they need much faster. It makes it so it's easier for all of us to access that information when it's not at the highest level. So this was one of the big things at the University of Minnesota, actually, that was one of the most challenging things in terms of accessibility, because we're working with so many professors that it was really challenging to make sure that the content on their department websites was at a 6th grade level at an academic institution, right? It could be a bit of a fight, but this is a really fantastic tool, Hemingway Editor. Excellent. All right, demo time. So first I'm going to look at a couple of different websites out in the wild, and then I'm going to show you a particular issue that I ran across and a couple of different ways to fix it in a little side project that I was working on. So first of all, let's look at Starbucks. Starbucks does a really great job with accessibility for their website. So I'm going to refresh the page here. One thing that you want to check when you are kind of evaluating a website's performance on accessibility is you arrive at the website and then start tabbing. Hang on, I need to move my people over. There we are. Okay, so I'm going to tab. Whoop, I don't think that'll work now because I just clicked off. Okay, I'm going to tab, and I get this button, skip to main content. Right, that tells me right away, oh, Starbucks is thinking about accessibility. So I can click on that, and then it will take me to the main content of the page instead of making me tab all the way through the navigation. So that's a really nice accessibility feature to have. And then I have installed this tool, Wave, and it is just a plugin for Chrome and I think for Firefox too. So if I just click this, it'll do an analysis of the page and it gives me the summary information. So it'll tell me what errors I have, if there are any contrast errors. I mean, this is really pretty amazing, like very impressive and surprising. Most websites are not this good. It'll show me any features. What's really nice about this tool too is that all of the information is highlighted. So let's see, what does this tell me? This tells me, oh, that's a navigation element. That's a good thing to have. Good job, Starbucks. And then it'll have a little tab here that shows details of what all of the different like errors and alerts are. So here, for example, it looks like there's an alert that says, okay, this alternative text is a little bit long. So if I click on that, it will take me to that very element on the page that has the long alternative text, so I can find it a lot more easily. So super handy for development. And then it even has information, some reference information, and then links out to where I can find the right guidelines to help me figure out how to fix it. I use this tool all of the time. It's very, 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 very good. Okay, so good job, Starbucks. Now let's look at the New York Times. Now, New York Times also does a very good job. They have skip links. Those are called when you tab in, and they do skip to main content. And they have a couple of different ones. So let's see, this page takes a long time to load because it has a lot of ads, which is not the best experience, but it is what it is for their business, right? I think I have to wait for the whole page to load. Oh, here I am. Okay, here I am. I'm tabbing. Oh, if I go back, skip to content. Then it also has skip to site index, which I think takes me down to this big fat footer that they have at the bottom, which that's a nice feature, et cetera, et cetera. So, but here I am going through the navigation. Now, if I wave this page, it's going to have a lot of errors. And what do you think most of those errors are? What does a newspaper website have a lot of on their
Alt.
Missing alt tags? Like, let's see how many. 18 missing alternative texts. Come on, New York Times. Like, really, that's probably the most straightforward thing to take care of, right? So they're missing alternative text on, that's 18 of their 19 errors on that page. So, but they do a lot of, right? They do a lot of good things too, right? Lots of features. There are a lot of contrast errors, which tells me that there's kind of a fight with design a little bit, right? That's a big fight that you can, not fight, but challenge that you can have with your design team. So it's really great to have a design team that's also really invested in accessibility with those contrast errors. Cool. Okay, so now let me pull up one more thing. All right, so my oldest son plays cello, and his teacher's been very ill. And so I volunteered a while back to make a little website for his recital instead of him having to do all of the work behind putting a recital together. And I was building it out, and then I wanted to wave it to make sure that everything was accessible, et cetera, et cetera. So thank you. I had fixed these issues, but I'm going to show you a couple of ways to fix what I came across. So I have 20 errors horrible. And if I click on it, oh, I love this tool so much. You just click on it and it tells you exactly what the error is. So it's telling me, oh, you have an empty button. This button is empty or has no value text. So it's not going to give good information to a screen reader because it's just an icon button. So let me show you a couple of different ways to fix it. Yes. Okay, so way number one, you all can see my VS Code, okay? Cool. So way number one, so this is my styled button. I'm using emotion, but it's basically the same as styled components, almost identical. If I put on my button an ARIA labeled by attribute, and then, oh, I don't want to do this, hang on one moment. That's the second one. And then I have a span with an ID that matches this button label, right? And then it has a hidden attribute on it. So if I do that, and then rewave it, what does it tell me now? Let's see. Oh, broken ARIA reference, one moment. I'm going to fix this, I think, so the ARIA reference needs to match. Button label dash info. Let's see if this works. No. So sad. Okay, hang on. I know how. Doing the same thing on another page. Let's do that. And there we go. All right, so ARIA labeled by with an ID that matches it, plus hidden attribute on the span. Okay, so that's one way to fix it. A different way to fix it is I'm using a React component actually that is called Visually Hidden. Visually Hidden is just a styled component that has some styles that it's not display none, but it makes it so that the children are visually hidden. So in this place, in this case, clear search makes it so that you can't see it and it doesn't take up any space on the DOM, but it will still be read by screen readers. And one also really cool thing about it, here, let me get it on the other one. Get rid of this. Get rid of this. Okay, so now I'm just using the visually hidden component. One really neat thing about this in development environment, but not in production. So I'm going to press my Option key and it'll show that text. So right, I put go to full screen and I put clear search. And if I press that down, then I can see and verify, oh, yep, I put the right text in there. So that's kind of neat, but that doesn't show up on production. So if I click wave, right, that's another way to take care of that error. So I linked out to this component actually. So I just included this in our component library at work and is so, so, so handy. And it just has overflow hidden and it has this clip property. You've probably seen this CSS applied out in the wild, but I just made it into, we just made it into a React component. Super handy. So I will link out to these slides and then it has all of these different links, including a link out to that visually hidden component so you can see a little bit more how it works under the hood. Assistive Labs and Fable Tech Labs. Fable Tech Labs is a company that you can hire to do an audit for your site, which is really, really like very luxurious and very fancy. And then they can help you also remediate accessibility issues. All right. And that's it. Any questions?
That was really cool to see.
Cool. Yeah, Wave is a really, 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 really great tool. Love to use it. All right. We're actually a little bit over time, but what do you all have any questions or anything that you need answered before the next week, or do you feel like you're in good shape?
So our issue for next week is basically to make our app accessible using all the tools that you gave us.
Exactly. I would see if you can find, because green is one of the main colors of your app, I would try to find a color checker that looks for that kind of color blindness, right? Just to make sure it doesn't, obviously it doesn't have to look the same, but the text and everything just needs to be legible. I would make sure to do that. I think accessibility wise that the application is in good shape, and using Material UI will really help, because they have that like baked in to their components. So. Awesome. All right, everybody. Home stretch.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's going to be great.
Bye,
I'm really looking
Bye,
forward to seeing it. Nice work.
Bye.